Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Bushes on the Trail. I'm Al, and they say hindsight is 20/20. So we're looking back at last year and the top 10 hikes we did for the entire year. From May through December, Christy and I did about 27 different hikes from Georgia through Virginia up to Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, several different states, a lot of different locations. And as we looked through the pictures, we thought, it'd be nice to know what our top 10 hikes were. So we put them together and thought we'd share those with you. Maybe it'll inspire you to do something in 2021. Also, something interesting about this, 6 of the hikes that made the top 10 have not been shown on our YouTube channel. So 6 of these are going to be brand new hikes that some of you have never seen before. We're going to try to keep it pretty limited to about a minute or two for each hike. So it should be an interesting countdown. I hope you stick around. Well, I want to give you a little background of how this came about. We're looking at our hiking logbook, and we were sort of asking ourselves, if we could do this all over again, what is the one hike that we would want to do if we could only do one? And obviously that became our number 1 hike. And then we said, well, if we remove that, now what's remaining if we could only do one of those hikes again? What would it be? Well, that became number 2, and we continued that exercise all the way to number 10. Now, doing this exercise, there were a couple hikes that we thought might make the top 10 that didn't quite make the cut. And there were a couple others that we thought would be just outside the top 10 when we were first glancing at all of our hikes that actually slid into the top 10. Now, one of the hikes that didn't make the cut, and we'll consider that an honorable mention right now, is Clingman's Dome in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Now, yes, it might be a surprise to you as it has some beautiful panoramic views. It is the highest point in the Smoky Mountains at over 6,600 feet in elevation. However, the views are fantastic, but the hike itself didn't quite make the cut. There's more to a hike than just the final destination or the views. The journey along the way helps make the hike a success. And the journey to Clingman's Dome isn't all that great. It's about a half of a mile up a steep elevation. It's all paved, not a ton to look at, some views off the side, but it's heavily trafficked with a lot of people around. And it just, the feel of the hike just wasn't there on that path. Now, if Christy and I would have taken another way to Clingman's Dome via the Appalachian Trail, then that might have changed our perspective, and I bet you Clingman's Dome probably would have jumped into the top 10 if we would have had a hike along the AT to sort of enhance the entire experience. So as you can see, perspective and the route you take can sort of, modify how these things are ranked in our top 10. So again, it's all in perspective and how we attack the hike. So that's enough on the background. Why don't we get started with number 10? The number 10 hike of 2020 is Laurel Falls in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Now, this hike is roughly 2.8 miles round trip. It is a very popular trail, and the later in the day you go, the more crowded it becomes. We would consider this an easy to moderate hike as the terrain is very forgiving and most of the trail is paved, although some of the pavement is broken. Now, the trip to the falls can be a little steep in portions, and the journey is practically uphill the entire way, but there are some really nice views of the surrounding Smoky Mountains. And as a bonus, you may come into some close encounters with wildlife, as we did with this big black bear. And this encounter was a little too close for comfort, but it made the hike extremely memorable. Now, the falls were beautiful, and the trail is in very close proximity to the falls. This is definitely a must-do hike when you visit the Great Smoky Mountains. The number 9 hike of 2020 is the Carter Caves Cross Country Trail, also known as the 4 Seas Trail. This is roughly a 9-mile loop in Carter Cave State Park in Olive Hill, Kentucky, and is one of the best hikes we have found in the far northeastern part of the state. We like it so well we have done it twice and will be going back. This trail can be surprisingly difficult if you're not ready for it. However, it is well worth the effort. There is practically something new to see around every corner. Along the way, you will pass under 2 natural arches, cross 2 suspension bridges, see 2 cascading waterfalls, walk next to a lake, and encounter countless rock features and interesting terrain as well. The trail also passes through a bat preservation area. If you're looking for a nice challenge and have about 5 hours to hike through a beautiful state park in Kentucky, then this hidden gem of a trail may be for you. The number 8 hike of 2020 is Grotto Falls via the Trillium Gap Trail. Now this trail is located in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. It is a highly trafficked trail and is one of the more popular ones in the park. The hike to the falls is roughly 3 miles round trip, and for the more adventurous hikers, the Trillium Gap Trail continues on to what is arguably the crown jewel of the Smoky Mountains, the summit of Mount LeConte. Along the way, you can enjoy a view of Gatlinburg and the general beauty of a Smoky Mountain trail. The short hike out and back to the falls is considered easy by hiking standards. I mean, the big payoff is the trail access, which travels behind the falls. This is a really nice hike, great for collecting beautiful pictures and creating memories to last a lifetime. This is especially true for those who are novice hikers and seeking a little adventure without taking an entire day to enjoy the journey. The number 7 hike of 2020 was Abrams Falls in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Now, as the sign says, Abrams Falls is a moderately difficult hike, and the trailhead is located in the back of Cades Cove. Now, this hike is an out and back trail, and the round trip is roughly 5.5 miles. Now, the trail is not easy, but it's not excessively difficult. There are portions that can be very challenging. There are some really nice views and some interesting terrain to cross, and encountering wildlife is a possibility, so keep your eyes open and watch where you step. Although there are a lot of people on this trail, it didn't seem nearly as crowded as Laurel or Grotto Falls. Now this is a really beautiful hike with a nice payoff at the end. So if you're planning on visiting Cades Cove and you're looking to tie in a nice 3 to 4 hour hike, then Abrams Falls is a very nice option. The number 6 hike of 2020 was Ramsey Cascades, and this arguably could have cracked the top 5 in our countdown. It is located in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park and is one of the more challenging and difficult hikes we tackled, but looking back, it was also one of the more rewarding hikes. This is an 8+ mile hike with lots of scenery. The first 1.5 miles or so follow an abandoned logging road, and then the trail narrows to a typical hiking path. Now the narrower portions of the trail can be very rugged. And the trail is uphill all the way to the falls. Now the last half mile or so of the falls is a steep and extremely rugged rock scramble. You may have to use your hands to climb up and pull yourself over the rocks. And after 3.5 miles of uphill hiking, that task can be a little difficult. The falls are absolutely magnificent, but there's not a lot of room up there for large crowds. It is also much cooler at the falls than at the trailhead, so pack an extra layer. Now the way back to the trailhead is all downhill and your knees may feel the impact, so trekking poles may provide some help. And if you're ready for the challenge of a strenuous hike to a beautiful waterfall, then give Ramsey Cascades a shot. The falls are definitely worth the sweat equity. The number 5 hike of 2020 is the Approach Trail in Georgia. It is a 9-mile trail that leads you to the summit of Springer Mountain, the southern terminus of the world-famous Appalachian Trail. Now, along this trail, you will see some iconic features, like the famous Stone Arch, where hiking dreamers from across the globe try to tackle an epic walk to Maine. You will pass by the majestic 729-foot-tall Amicalola Falls. This is Georgia's tallest waterfall. This portion of the hike offers breathtaking views of the falls, and then also gives you a taste of the challenge to come, as you have to traverse over 600 steps to reach the top of the falls before continuing on roughly another 8 miles to the summit of Springer Mountain. Now, the Approach Trail to Springer Mountain is not for the faint of heart. Although short portions of the trail do seem smooth and tranquil, and at times it's easy to get lost in the surrounding forest beauty. However, those moments are short-lived, as the majority of the hike in the Georgia heat and humidity is very daunting, especially with 30 pounds of gear on your back. The terrain can be steep and rugged, and the water sources along the way are unreliable at best. I mean, the challenge is real, but very fulfilling. The feeling when you finally reach the summit of Springer Mountain is both a feeling of relief and exhilaration. I mean, you're standing at the threshold of a historic trail. You see those two iconic bronze plaques which mark the beginning of a long and arduous 2,193-mile journey. And then your spine tingles when you finally see that first white blaze on the tree, where adventurous hikers take the first of 5 million steps to that epic ending on the summit of Mount Katahdin in Maine. The number 4 hike of 2020 was Rainbow Falls in the Great Smoky Mountains. Now this hike was one that to this very day, Christy claims she enjoyed every single step of this hike. It is a difficult hike that is practically uphill the entire way to the falls, but the beauty and peaceful feeling of the trail is indescribable. The hike out and back to the falls is roughly 6 miles and is more difficult than it seems. There is a 1,640-foot elevation gain to the falls, and the terrain can be really rugged. The trail may not be as physically daunting as Ramsey Cascades, but it is still a very challenging hike. Some of the views that you take in along your journey are tremendous. And as a bonus, you might also have some really close encounters with wildlife while visiting the falls. Rainbow Falls is the tallest waterfall in the Smokies with an 80-foot drop, and it gets its name from a rainbow which can be seen from the mist of the falls when the sunlight strikes it just right. Plus, if you're feeling really adventurous, you can continue on past the falls up another 4 miles to the summit of Mount LeConte. Even if you don't continue to the summit, just making the trek to this waterfall is well worth the effort. The number 3 hike of 2020 was the Jump Off and Charlie's Bunion via the Appalachian Trail. Now this hike was a 9.5 mile out and back, and the journey begins at this sign located next to the Newfound Gap parking lot on the Tennessee-North Carolina line. From the parking lot, you will follow those iconic white blazes uphill for about 2.5 miles over rugged terrain. Along the way, you'll be catching beautiful glimpses of Mount LeConte and the surrounding Smoky Mountains. Most of the way, the trail to Charlie's Bunion is not marked. That is, until around the 2.7 mile mark of your journey, you will come to the Boulevard Trail Junction. Here, you will see directional signs for both Charlie's Bunion and the Jump Off Trail. First, we went to the Jump Off Trail, which was arguably the most rugged portion of the entire trip. However, the trek was well worth the effort as the views were absolutely spectacular. They were some of the best views in the park, and they brought about several audible wows as we gazed upon the surrounding beauty. The views were so epic that they inspired me to actually create 2 pieces of artwork which are hanging on the walls of our home. Now, not to be outdone were the views from Charlie's Bunion. Although these 2 places are highly visited, don't let the crowds keep you away. These hikes are a must-do on a clear day in the Smokies. The number 2 hike of 2020 was McAfee Knob, located along the Appalachian Trail on Catawba Mountain in Southern Virginia. Now this hike is typically about an 8 mile out and back from the Appalachian Trail parking lot. However, for Christy and I, we turned this into an 11-mile day as we continued on to further explore more of the northbound AT. McAfee Knob is a difficult hike with some rough terrain and is mostly uphill from the parking lot to the knob. However, it is a hike which will keep your interest along the way, as there are many interesting rock features and some beautiful mountain views to be seen along your journey. One thing to keep in mind is to bring plenty of water, as water sources were mostly dried up during our late summer hike. This is a very popular trail, so expect to pass a lot of hikers going to and returning from the knob. As always, you follow those iconic white blazes for roughly 4 miles to a blue blaze, which will lead you to the most photographed location along the Appalachian Trail. Now, McAfee Knob offers iconic photos and roughly 270 degrees of panoramic views of the Catawba Valley and surrounding mountains. McAfee Knob is also one of the jewels of the Virginia Triple Crown. The other 2 are the Dragon's Tooth and Tinker's Cliffs. For any of you who love hiking, adventures, or epic views, then completing this trail will definitely bring you a feeling of pure joy. The number 1 hike of 2020 was Mount LeConte via the Alum Cave Trail, and this was a no-brainer. Mount LeConte is arguably the crown jewel of the Smoky Mountains, and the Alum Cave Trail is one of the shorter but steeper climbs to the summit. Now, passing through natural structures like arch rock seen here just adds to the intrigue of the strenuous hike. Along the way, you hike over seemingly impassable terrain, and you'll pass by the Eye of the Needle and countless other awe-inspiring views of the surrounding mountains. Alum Cave Bluffs is a steep dirt incline passing along a huge rock structure. Here, the hike up the side of the bluff is steep and slick, but this is a great resting point before continuing on to the summit. Now, the trail past the bluffs to the summit is steep, narrow, and difficult, with many cable lines along the mountain to hold on to while traversing rugged terrain. The trail has unique features and is daunting, but what a feeling it is to finally see the dining room of LeConte Lodge. But the hike is not quite over. From here, you are not far from the summit of 6,593 feet, marked by a cairn of rocks. The 6-mile trek to the summit is just the beginning. From there, it is another mile to Myrtle Point for amazing views off the east side of the mountain. Then you turn around and retrace your steps and head toward cliff tops. Now, it's about a 1.5 mile hike from Myrtle Point over very rugged terrain to cliff tops. However, the majestic westward facing views are indescribably beautiful. If you're fortunate enough to stay on the mountain, then a sunset from cliff tops is highly, highly recommended. The beauty and experience may actually bring tears to your eyes. Otherwise, it's a 6-mile descent back to the parking lot. But however you tackle this trail and mountain, I guarantee the experience will be memorable. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that half as much as Christy and I enjoyed going out and doing those hikes. They were fantastic. We loved every one of them. And actually, we'd probably do them all again this year if we had time and could. And we hope that they inspire you to take on 1 or 2 of those trails throughout 2021. If you do, you're not going to be disappointed because they are all great trails. So thanks for watching. If you don't mind, please give us that thumbs up. It helps people find this video on YouTube. And you can follow us at Bushes on the Trail on Facebook and on Instagram. And please, if you don't mind, hit that subscribe button below. That way you don't miss any of our other adventures right here at Bushes on the Trail.